Well, hey guys, after an exciting weekend for my 50th birthday, I decided I might as well put out a video eventually here. So today's video, we're going to be discussing and reviewing the DX Commander Expedition POTA antenna. Now, I recently purchased this, and I'll get into all that stuff here. But stay tuned. That is right here, right now on Ham Radio for Non-Techies. Welcome back, guys. I appreciate you coming in to watching the show and everything. My name is Scott. My call sign is KI5MPL, and I run the Ham Radio for Non-Techies channel here. If you're new to the channel, consider liking these videos and subscribing. It helps me out, and I've tried to bring you guys some really good information, try to bring value to my viewers. Anyway, like I was saying, about a month ago, I purchased the DX Commander Classic antenna, and I talked about that, did a video on that, and I really enjoyed it. And then I decided, well, I've got my M-Pass, but everybody's been talking about this DX Commander Expedition, this POTA antenna. That's supposed to be portable, easy to set up, blah, blah, blah. And I wanted to check it out. So I went ahead and purchased one, and it got here pretty quick. A couple little issues here and there for things, but it got here pretty quick. And so we're going to go downstairs and get this thing built. I am not going to make you guys watch the whole thing in real time, because I know nobody wants to sit there and watch my fat rear end build an antenna. But I will speed up the areas and show you what I was doing and basically how I got it set up, some little tips and tricks for you. And then we'll come back up here. We'll discuss, let's do a closing thoughts on it and tell you what I like, and if there's anything, maybe what I don't like. So with that, guys, I will see you downstairs and we'll get this party started. All right, guys, I wanted to jump on here and do this little unboxing and maybe try to get this thing built all in the same video without boring you guys. I'll have to end up speeding up some of the stuff here, but this is the DX Commander Expedition. So let's get it cracked open. I'm not expecting too much as far as differences between this and the Classic that we did a while back. I think there'll be a couple little similarities and a couple little differences, but we'll just have to see together. Now, like I said, this thing got here very quickly. So I was very happy with the speed in which it made it here. So I guess that's our pole. So I've got a little box of goodies like last time. And our bag of goodies. And another 100 meters of this really awesome wire that Callum packs with these antennas. I really do like this stuff. I found it to be really, really easy to work with and quite enjoyable. So let's pop open the box. Of course, we have more of our stuff with our SO239 connector. Very similar to the what was on, actually exactly the same thing was on the DX Commander Classic. The only differences I'm noticing here are the plates. You guys can take a look at that there. So when I was talking to Callum about this, I've got it set up. I printed out the instructions, which you probably should do. I got it set up. I'm going to do 40, 20, and 17, which that's going to be 40, 15, 20, and 17. He says you can add 10 onto here. So we're going to see if we can make 10 work with what we got. But yeah, so that's the only little difference I'm seeing here is that we have this piece here. And we got our nylon pieces. Very nice machining. Again, this is very, very well thought out, very well planned, and Callum did an excellent job with the execution of this particular model. And there's our other plate. So if it's anything like before, it'll sit something like this onto the setup, and we just go from there. Looks like we got our bag of nuts and bolts and wire and everything. And I wanted to see this pole, because when I talked to Callum about this, this is actually, I think he said it's a smaller pole, but it's actually a little bit longer or a little bit taller than the Classic was. So we'll see. I might be able to open it up in the house here. And we're not doing this out in my shop today because it is about 95 degrees and it feels like about 105. So I'm not going to deal with that kind of weather today. Oh, wow. All right, so quickly, a big difference is because this is made for POTA and it's supposed to be portable. Instead of getting a little plastic bag we got last time with the Classic, this actually comes in killer little cloth bag with his logo on there, of course. So we'll get this untied and see what we got inside. Very nice. So yeah, that's pretty much the same setup, just a whole lot shorter. I'd say it's probably about 24 inches across. You can find out for sure. So I just happen to have my Woodpecker's 24-foot rule. So okay, it's a little over 24-inch rule. It's a little over 24 inches with the top cap and bottom cap. But yeah, overall, so far, if this is all you had to carry with your radio equipment, I think it'd work out just fine. We'll see. It says there's a couple more pieces inside of this thing. See if I can get this cap off. Yeah, so yeah, okay, so that's about the same. Doesn't have the little loop on it like the other one did, but we're not running a wire over the end of this, so that might not, unless it's might be in the pack here. Might be a loop here in the pack, but I'm not seeing one on the actual piece here. So, wow, this really goes out really tiny. I say our smallest piece there is probably about 5 or 6 millimeters. This the longest little piece here. But that looks like it's going to work. And it's definitely just going to keep bringing this thing out. Yeah, I'm already about to hit the window on the other side of the living room here, guys. So you said it's a little bit longer than the other pole, just in a more compact size. And I believe him. So that's really cool. All right, so we'll get that back where that belongs. And of course, as always, once I get the screws and wing nuts onto this piece, then this will actually permanently mount to the bottom here. And I'm assuming this piece will come over across the top and slide down to the top there so everything can be done right. So yeah, I'm pretty happy with this so far. So we'll start getting this built, or I'll start getting this built. You're not here to help me. Yeah, we'll just get this going and see how the build goes. What I really want to try to figure out with this, I want to make sure that I get it done right the first time. It's really important to set this thing up the first time right, because you're going to be taking this down and setting it back up whenever you're going out and doing things, unless you're going to make it a permanent structure, which if you're going to make a permanent antenna, I'd highly suggest getting the Classic. This one is better for doing your POTA stuff, and it's designed to be carried in a pack. And it's still, still relatively light. This thing probably only weighs maybe 3 or 4 pounds. So it's not really that heavy. And if you're carrying a bunch of other radio equipment, it's going to be a lot less aggravating to carry this little bit of stuff all assembled in a couple bags with your radio equipment rather than a bigger setup. So with that, guys, we'll come back here in a little bit. I'm going to get these parts done, and I'll see you soon. Okay, so first off, I'm assembling the plates here first, and you get these little screws, or little bolts that go in there, and you also get the wing nuts. So these are all going to be 10 millimeters. So if you have have that dreaded 10 millimeter wrench, that's what will fit and allow you to tighten all these parts down. So what I do first is I start off with getting these screwed in as much as I can. I'll come back with my wrench, just kind of cinch them up. You don't want to go crazy with it. You just want them nice. You want them nice and flush, or as flush as you can get them without over tightening. You don't want to strip out these threads. So let's get those in there. Like I said, I'm not putting a whole lot of pressure on it. That part is done. So now, grab our washers. All placed properly. Grab our wing nuts. Like I said, it gives you plenty of hardware here. You actually get a little extra hardware just in case you screw something up. And that's very, very useful rather than have to go out to the hardware store and hit up Home Depot to find more parts. But that's the bottom plate there. And I said I started working on the secondary plate. You get that. Sometimes these are a little bit crazy to work with. Get them started. Get the threads through there. That'll tighten right up. Going. Very easy build, guys. Just, you know, the problem is there's just a lot of steps. And the good thing is you only really need to do it once. So once you get this thing set up and everything's cut right and all that stuff, you should be ready to roll. That in there nice and tight. Up again. Keep hitting that other plate. Sorry about the excess noise here, guys. Trying to use this new camera setup I got here to have an overhead camera while I'm building. Always trying to improve the quality of the video that I bring you guys. And I say, you know, I got the instructions on here, and he didn't really show, like on the Commander Classic, where you're going to be putting the wires. I guess if I actually sit down and read the manual and kind of figure this all out, I'll figure it out. But if you go over to his website, and if you don't know the website, I'll have the link down below in the video. Or you can just Google DX Commander, and he comes up #1 all across Google. Whatever he's doing for his marketing is working. There's the top plate there, and that's ready to roll. I just got to figure out the configuration of this is. I've already printed out what bands are going to be on which things. I just got to figure out how exactly that's going to be done. I haven't quite figured that part out yet. So I will come back when I know this part, and we will go from there. See you guys shortly. Okay, so after further instruction here and looking on the site, he really didn't have a whole lot of pictures. He shows us assembled, but he didn't show how he marked it. But I was able to pick out that he had the three angles, or the three corners of the triangle were the different elements. And I think there's an extra one here for, I guess, well, if it's in this orientation, then it was set like this on the pole. So this one's going to go into SO239. I got mine marked for 17, 40, and 15, 20. And I'm assuming that this extra one here is to run a 10. So if I'm able to run 10 meters on this antenna, I'll put that there. So we'll get that back here in just a second. Now, another thing I wanted to discuss, aside from having the plate marked, so I know where it's, I mean, I assume it's going to be a permanent setup on the antenna here like this when I get it onto the pole. But Callum had a great idea by going on to Amazon and picking up this little bag. I've had maybe $8. It's a little bag of those charm bracelet, but I got the ones with just numbers on them. I guess there's a couple of little weird things on here. But I'm going to use these to actually mark my cables or my wires for each band. So I'll go ahead and pick out of this bag a 40, 15, or I'll just do a 40 on that one, do a 17, a 10, and a 20, and get these assembled. And I'll run these down the cables when I get them attached to these little connectors here. Once these connectors are on here with the wire and everything, I'll have these things on here, just like I did with the Classic. I think that's a brilliant idea to help keep track of which wire is which, especially if you're going to be taking this thing down and setting it up all the time, like I'm planning on. So I think that's the way to do it. I'll have the link to these down below in the video description as well if you want to follow along and grab these. They're worth having, even though you might use them only for one antenna or maybe two. They're not that expensive, and it takes a whole lot of aggravation out of trying to remember what wire goes to what. So we'll check back here in just a sec, guys. So moving on to the SO239 connector and how that attaches to the base plate here. In the instructions, he says to unscrew this and just go ahead and get rid of little pieces here. I'm going to keep this part and put that into the setup. I'm just going to run this through. I'll run this washer through here, just give it a little bit of a tighter connection. I put the nut on. But I can see why he's saying do that, because you don't get a whole, there's not a whole lot of thread left here to run through. I really want this to be nice and tight. So I will get that put on. Oh. And I'm going to do something a little bit different. I'll talk to you about that here in a second once this freaking nut cooperates. All right, here we go. So I would probably grab a pair of pliers and tighten this part down as much as you can and get that nice and firmly on there. Now he gives you in the instructions here, I was looking at the instructions right here on how to waterproof this. He says to cut this stretchy tape into 2 parts and wrap the first part around to enlarge this area, and then use the second part of the tape to wrap around and just make everything nice and watertight. What I do with my Commander Classic, when I built that up, I actually took my hot glue gun. After all this was on here nice and tight, took my hot glue gun and I built up an amount of hot glue all the way in a conical shape, all the way out to where he's got the heat shrink connection right here. And that gave me a nice firm area once that cooled down and solidified. That gave me a nice cool area here in which to wrap this tape around, and it made it very, very easy and very idiot-proof. So I think it's probably safe to say you can go either way. If you want to go ahead and fight with trying to wrap a little piece of tape around this first and going back to a second piece of tape, that's one way to do it. But I find it easier if you have a hot glue gun without burning and trashing anything here. You don't want to mess up the connector itself. Just drop some hot glue all the way around here. Just build out a conical shape. I have to set it up in orientation like this, just kind of build it up as you go. But I found that worked out really well for me. And, you know, my Classic is still out in the backyard working just fine. So I'm going to get this stuff tightened up, get this hot glued, and then we'll come back. All right, so I actually have 2 different glue guns here. I've got the bigger one here that I use for, you know, larger projects. And I've got a smaller one with a more precision type tip on it that I don't have hooked up at the moment. So we're going to try and see if we can get it done with this one. I think it's the one I used last time when I was doing this. But like I said, I'm just going to go around. I'm going to set down some glue. Want it all the way around this piece. If you have the luck with doing it the way that the instructions say, that's perfectly fine. Either way is going to work. I just happen to have a glue gun handy and the time to do it. I'm going to get this done. And the main part you want to be, you know, cognizant of and make sure you don't screw up, not letting that hot tip of your glue gun sit on that that middle part of the SO239 connector. Get that up there. We're just going to build it up a little bit. We'll grab another glue stick here in a second. I'm going to probably run out. But you want this to, you know, you don't want it to get all goopy and glob up on you and become a big blob at the bottom. So you want to kind of keep this thing moving a little bit. You just kind of watch. You'll see how hot the glue's getting and how it's acting and stuff like that. You want to get that all in there. Get that all moved around. See if that will work. See if I'm smart enough not to touch it. Being hot. I want to move this stuff around. Make sure I got a good seal all the way around. If I see any little air holes anywhere, I want to drop a little bit more on that section. But I think at this point, probably good. Anything on the back end? Still a little goopy and warm. Give this thing a second to calm down so I can. That should look pretty decent. Okay, so I actually filmed the next part and realized that my microphone was off the whole time, so we get to refilm this again. Okay, so the next part we're going to deal with is actually one of the easiest parts to build, but still requires a little bit of your attention to make sure you do it right. That's assembling the bottom plate to the pole and putting the next plate up on top. So to do that, go to the bottom of your pole. You'll remove the cap carefully. Don't lose this little piece here. Make sure you get it back oriented the way it's supposed to be. Then we'll grab our bottom plate and slide that in. Now, when putting this cap back on, set it on there and go in reverse a little bit so you feel it catch. You'll know when it catches. And just go ahead and tighten that down. The reason for that is you don't want to strip out those threads. They're plastic threads. You strip them out, your life's going to suck, and nobody wants that. So the bottom plate is now in permanently. It's not going anywhere. We'll now take off the cap off the top. Do this quickly here. And now we'll take our plate with the numbers facing up and slide that onto our thing here, our assembly. That's about where it's going to go. I'm not going to permanently set it there just yet because I still have one more step to do, but I want to get that arranged, make sure that my wires are where they're supposed to be. That's where I'm going to, this is where I'm going to have my SO239 connecting into the antenna right there. We'll get that all arranged where we want it. But the next part is going to be working with, oops, sorry about that. The next part's going to be getting the, what he calls Jubilee clips onto this. So the way we do this, when you get the kit, it comes with 3 Jubilee clips, or Jubilee clamps, whatever, and this tubing. So what you want to do is get a screwdriver, Phillips head screwdriver, and unscrew these. And you want to measure out about how much of this tubing you need, and then cut that tubing and fish it through the pieces here. So I don't have my screwdriver handy at the moment because I didn't think this through as well as I should have. But I'm going to go ahead and take care of that, and I'll be right back. Okay, so now I got my screwdriver in here again. We're going to go ahead and unscrew these clips as much as we need to get it out of there. More. All right, so I have that in there now. So what I was generally doing with the last build, I would put this tubing in here. Got to kind of finagle it around a little bit, get it to go in, but it will go in. And keep in mind, you're going to want a little bit of space on these things, so don't rush this part. You know, it's really, you're not in a big hurry. You know, the radio's still going to be there. So I want to get that right about where you're seeing it now, where it's all done. I want to bring back some on this cut because some of this is going back into the clip. So I will go back through and I'll probably cut off maybe right about there, I guess. I just don't want it to scratch the pole. I want to kind of protect the pole. At the same time, I don't want any problems and issues. I'm going to back this out a little bit. Finger on the spot that I want. Grab my trusty skizzers. And make the cut. Now with that in there like that, I can bring this back around. I kind of tuck the tubing underneath this other screw here. I can now bring this whole piece around, try to somewhat feed it into the end, and then with my screwdriver, go back in and try to re-grab it, which seems like it's doing just fine. Don't do too much because, like I said, this has to go over that pole now. So I want to kind of spin it around a little bit. You know, and I probably should have put a little bit more on here. Again, don't rush this, but I think this will work for my purposes at the moment. I don't think it's going to. If not, I've got plenty of this. And if not, I can go get some more. So just getting this one clip in here. We'll go ahead and remove the top cap once again. I will slide this clip down where it seats out of the way of everything else. Make sure it's nice and snug. Make sure it's lined up where I want it. Kind of like your permanent setup here. So get it right the first time. Now proceed to screw this in. You don't need to use the hand of God on this thing here. You just want it nice and snug. The whole idea is you'll want the tension from the wires and the you're putting up here and the stretchy cord to cause this thing to slide up the pole here and screw up your antenna. I think we're pretty good there. One little check for good measure. I think we're good. That is set up, guys. That's ready to go. I'm going to put the cap back on so I'll drop pole sections all over my living room. But that's ready to go. So the next part is going to be cutting all the wires for 20, 40, 17, and 10. So with that, I'm going to be using that metric tape I bought for the last build, which saved my butt. Trying to translate the millimeters into American standard is a pain. So what I did is I went onto Amazon and I bought this measuring tape, and it's 50 meters long. And like I said, I'm not really keen about going out in my garage today because it's just too hot. So I'll set this up between the first living room down the hallway to the second living room, and get the different measurements set up and cut, and we'll come back. See you shortly. Okay, so I've now completed cutting all of the elements. I got my 40, 17, 20, and 10. So what I wanted to bring to your attention here on the cut sheet for the wires is showing, like, for the 10 meter band, 2.5 meters plus 5 centimeters. That's 255 centimeters total. I went through and I made all different adjustments here just to keep the math easy and keep this streamlined and flowing. So what I will do next now is I will strip the end of these wires and get these little connectors on here. We'll get those crimped and soldered, and we'll start the next part. Real quick, guys, I just want to plug these crimpers again. I got these Titans on Amazon. I think I put a link to them when I did the DX Commander Classic before. But these are really killer. I just feed this wire in. They're ratcheting. I just feed the wire in the front there. Squeeze down. Perfect amount of squeeze every time. And these things are on there nice and tight. Probably don't even have to solder them. I'm going to go ahead and drop a bead of solder on each one of these wires now that I've got them all crimped. I just wanted to show you that. These are really, if you're going to be doing a lot of stuff with wiring, don't go on the cheap and use the cheap ones like these Irwins that I've got, which are great wire strippers, but the crimpers on here are garbage. Even when I crimp stuff with them before, I've had the wires fall out of the fitting. So spend the extra money and get yourself a good set of crimpers. These things will last you a lifetime, so it's well worth having. That's what I just want to show you. Next part up, we're going to start getting the soldering on and get these wires ready to go. Okay, so we're back. We're going to try to attempt this soldering, and I'm pretty sure the best way to screw up a soldering job is to do it live on camera in front of people. Need it the most. I'm going to go ahead and give this a shot. Heat up wires here. You can kind of tell, you can see when you get the solder hot enough, it'll start to go into the fibers, so to speak, of the wire. Got a good solid connection. Now, I don't claim to be a soldering genius, and I'm pretty sure somebody out there is going to look at this and go, "You screwed that up." But you know what? Again, I'm here. I'm doing it. Looks like it worked. That taken care of. Decent little connection. Damn thing's hot. Yeah, that's good. So once this cools off, I'll run the shrink wrap up to here, and then we'll drop in our little number beads, and this wire will be done. I'm going to go ahead and save you guys. You don't need to sit here and watch me solder. I'm going to get the other 3 wires soldered and ready to go. And probably should actually have cut all the elements first, or not the elements, the counterpoise wires, and then done all the soldering and connecting. But I'm kind of going a little backwards here today. So let me get these. Antenna wires done, and we'll come back. Okay, so the soldering is done. I just want to point out one other little tip. You're supposed to cover these little fittings on the end of the wire with the shrink wrap. It is a lot easier if when you strip the wire, you have one of these things cut and slide it down the wire before you put the fitting on. Otherwise, you got to go to the end of the wire and feed this thing all the way down to get it on here. So I'm going to go ahead, set this thing up. We'll use this little reworking tool to shrink, heat shrink, preferably without burning the absolute piss out of myself. It does get hot, except for 400 degrees. Connection solid. So with that, this was the 17 meter. So I'll go on to here and grab a 1/7 coconut. Now let's grab the other end of this wire. Sorry about being off camera there for a second. You'll understand in just a minute. Our 1 in there, 17 meter. Let's pull this all the way through. There you go. Our 17 meter wire is now marked, ready to be installed on the antenna. So I'll go ahead, again, like last time, I'll go ahead and do the rest of the wires, be done with it. You don't really need to sit here and watch this. It's like watching paint dry. I'll be back. All right, so since I left you guys last, I spent about 20-30 minutes measuring and cutting out 23.5 meter or 350 centimeter counterpoise wires. So I have 4 sets of 5. So what the instructions tell you to do is to strip these down now on the end of it. Freaking nightmare. You find you strip the ends, and you'll put 5 ends into one of these little fittings. Now again, with same thing with this, as I said before, cut and run your shrink wrap first. Otherwise, your life is going to suck. So I'm going to go ahead and get these things stripped, shrink wrapped, and crimped onto the fittings, and we'll be back shortly. Okay, so after going out to the shop, I grabbed one of my scratch-alls. I've got it sharpened down a pretty decent point, but it's got a decent conical shape here. I was able to stick into the fitting and widen it just a little bit. Be very careful if you do this method. You don't want this thing going through your hand or through a finger. Not worth it. If anything, get maybe another pair of pliers and grip onto this thing while you try to move this thing through a little bit carefully to widen that gap that these wires will fit. So now these wires are in here, I'll go ahead and back to my fantastically awesome little crimpers here. We're going to crimp the ever-loving crap out of these things. With that done, once I get all 4 sets of the wires completed, then I will come back. I'll add a little bit of solder everything down, make sure I get down in the wires in here. or little strands, but that should be one set of counterpoise wires ready to go. Okay, so since we spoke last, I went ahead, I finished all of the elements, and I finished all the counterpoise wires. The one screw up that I had, I'm really hoping none of you are actually following along with this video and doing it as I'm talking about it. I misread what he said about the counterpoise wires. And the connectors that come with the kit, I misinterpreted to say 5 wires per connector and was wondering why I was having such a hard time getting both the wires in the connector and getting the shrink wrap that he provides over top of the wires. Realized after reading it and thinking about it for a second and having my duh moment that he was actually saying 4 wires. So I went back, had to recut a couple of them, and I lost about a ½ inch on each one. But I now have 5 sets of 4 wires for all my counterpoise. So those are all ready to go. And I went ahead and picked up these only carabiners I could find over at Home Depot because they suck. I was trying to find something a little more bright. I wanted like the bright red or bright orange, something that you couldn't just walk into. And just like the last build, he does provide you with a nice length of 550 cord, but it is black. And especially if I'm going to be out doing POTA activations with this antenna, I want to make sure that the antenna is as visible as possible. So I changed out and used some of my red 550 cord that I've got a lot of. So I'm using that instead for the guy wires on the antenna. And as you saw before, we have the antenna ready to go here. So the next setup, or the next step is going to be to extend the antenna pole out in the backyard, attach the elements. We'll go ahead and get all the wires hooked up. I got all little snaps and snips and things going on. Get this all assembled here. And then I think I will go ahead and set it up temporarily, connect all the counterpoise wires, and run an SWR test based on what we've done so far, and see if we got pretty close where we were. I did, however, I thought I was having issues with the Classic, and turns out it was a setting on my radio. But just for the hell of it, I went ahead and set my DX Commander Classic up on my RigExpert antenna analyzer, and on the bands that I cut the elements for, I was getting SWR of 1.3, 1.1, 1.2. So absolutely fantastic readings on the SWR for this antenna, just based on what he writes in the instructions. So very important to follow the instructions. I've got a couple little things I got to do left here. I've got to, of course, bend these back. I got to find 6 centimeters, bend that back to make a loop, because that's what's going to attach to the little hooks that he provides in the kit. So I'm gonna get that stuff done, and I'll probably bring the camera outside and do the whole setup. But I will be speeding up the video because nobody wants to sit there and watch me fumble around in my backyard trying to hook up antenna wires. So we'll get that part taken care of, and I'll see you guys out back for the actual build. Well, I got it up there, but I don't like the way that's bending. And that 40-meter line all the way down is really loose. I'm gonna have to go back and make some adjustments on it. But I think for right now, I'm just gonna get the antenna analyzer, see what kind of readings I get, and we'll go from there. All right, guys, so we're out here. Gonna fire up the RigExpert, and we're gonna do a multi-test and hit start. So you can see there, 40 meters is at 1.9. It's under 2 to 1 SWR. 20 meters, 1.4 to 1. Let's see here. Yeah, we're low across the board. 1.4 to 1, 2.2, 1.8. And it looks like 10 meters is sitting at about 3.4. So I have to maybe mess with that one a little bit. But that's pretty good for a first time setup. And with that antenna, well, see, it fixed itself now. I don't know what in the hell happened. But yeah, the antenna fixed itself, so. Yeah, 10 meters still running at 3.4. It's not terrible, but I'm pretty happy with the results so far of the other bands. So that's a good thing. Okay, so we're back now to closing thoughts. I apologize for the horrible video editing techniques used there. It seemed like a good idea to have me build the whole antenna and then shorten speed the video up so you can kind of watch, but I saw lots of blank spots, and you know, hopefully maybe you skipped through some of that and got rid of that. But I want to talk about the antenna a little bit. We had really good SWR readings on it, and everything seemed to be working just fine. I hooked up to the radio, picking up channels just as well as the classic. Had no issues. The only thing I did do differently, the classic came with on the very top extension on the pole. It had a little loop built into it, and he talks about how to kind of mess with the wire and stuff like that to make that happen again. But what I ended up doing is taking some of the extra wire that was in the kit, and I took that piece of plastic tubing that he gave with it, and I made my own little loop that I just cranked down onto the end of the pole and then run my 40-meter wire through that. And that seems to have worked just fine. I really would have liked to have seen, that's the only complaint that I've got, I would have liked to have seen a similar loop like what was on the classic on this particular antenna. It would still fit. I think it would provide the space that you need and keep it quick for deployment and takedown. So if you're gonna do a little hack, that'd be the only hack I'd suggest. Other than that, the whole rest of the antenna, everything the way that it worked fine. Still a very good build. It was relatively easy. Taking it down took me. I had to get it down yesterday after I started shooting the SWR meter readings. When that got done, there was a storm starting to roll in. I didn't want this thing sitting out during that whole thing and waiting for it. So I went down and took it back down, and the takedown was about maybe 10 minutes, maybe 12 minutes. It wasn't very long. You unhook all your wires, you roll them all up, wherever's going to be easiest for you, stack those aside, take the pole down, take out the guy lines, and it all packs up pretty compactly. So, yeah, I think it's a great antenna. If you're looking for something for POTA, or just something you want to have that's, portable, I'd say go over to, Callum's website and go get yourself a DX Commander Expedition. Choose whatever bands you want, whatever bands you're going to be utilizing, and set it up for that. And I think you'd be good to go. This is just as good as the classic. The only difference is this is a little more portable, a little bit smaller. But, I think it was easier to set up, actually. There's less wires to deal with. A couple little things you got to kind of play with. But again, the main thing is don't rush this. Take your time with this and just do it right the first time. Because you got to make it to where it's going to be repeatable every time you set it up. It sets up exactly the same. So remember how you pull that pole apart, or how you set that pole up, and what kind of tension you're putting on. Just try to get as close as possible, and then start get all your wires running. That way, every time you do this, it'll work every time. And the more you do it, the more you use it, obviously you'll get more used to it, becomes more habitual, and you'll be able to set it up really quick. Anyway, guys, I've taken enough of your time up. This has been a long video. I do apologize, but I wanted to come back in and really show you what it's like to build one of these in an almost real-time perspective. But I didn't want to bore you with having you actually watch me out there cooking my rear end off in the heat, trying to set this thing up. So anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you do, please consider liking and subscribing. And until then, guys, my name is Scott. My call sign is KI5MPL. This is Ham Radio for Non-Techies, and we are clear.